In the most ancient records of biblical tradition and in the apocryphal texts that humanity has preserved for millennia, there exists a figure who transcends all mortal understanding. Michael, the archangel whose name means "who is like God." From the first verses of the book of Daniel to the apocalyptic visions of the New Testament, his presence rises like a pillar of divine fire that separates light from darkness. In the Hebrew Scriptures, Michael appears not only as a celestial messenger, but as the supreme commander of the armies of the Most High, the protector of Israel, and the warrior who is destined to lead the final battle against the forces of evil. The apocryphal texts, especially the Book of Enoch, reveal even deeper dimensions of his nature, describing how his flaming sword was forged in the celestial furnaces before the foundation of the world, and how his voice can shake the foundations of the cosmos when he proclaims divine justice. But these millennial narratives contain something that goes far beyond religious mythology, something that touches the deepest fibers of human experience. Perhaps you know that feeling of being awake in the quietest hours of the night, when the weight of worries becomes almost tangible and your mind cannot find rest. Maybe you have experienced those moments when you feel as if you are facing battles that no one else can see, internal struggles that exhaust your soul and make you long for a protection that transcends the earthly. This restlessness that keeps you in vigil, this search for something greater that can offer you true security and peace, finds echo in the figure of Michael, who represents the divine force that can calm the fiercest storms of the human spirit. Allow me to accompany you on this journey through his complete story, a narrative that will not only teach you about celestial mysteries, but can become the balm your soul needs to finally find the rest you have been seeking. The first appearance of Michael in the canonical scriptures comes to us through the prophet Daniel, who lived during the Babylonian captivity in the 6th century before Christ. In those days of exile and despair, when the chosen people found themselves far from their promised land, Daniel received visions that would forever change the understanding of celestial worlds. In the 10th chapter of his book, Daniel describes an extraordinary encounter that took place by the river Tigris. He had been fasting and mourning for 3 full weeks, seeking divine understanding about the future of his people, when a being of indescribable glory appeared before him. However, this vision was interrupted by an even more amazing revelation. An angel explained to him that he had been sent from the first day of his prayer, but had been detained for 21 days by the prince of the kingdom of Persia, a spiritual entity that ruled over that region. It was then that Michael, described as one of the chief princes, came to the aid of the celestial messenger, fighting a spiritual battle in the celestial spheres so that the answer to Daniel's prayers could finally reach earth. This first revelation of Michael immediately establishes his role as the great intercessor and protector, the one who fights in dimensions that escape human perception to ensure that the prayers of the faithful reach the throne of the Most High. But Daniel receives even more information about this extraordinary archangel. In chapter 12, it is revealed to him that Michael is the great prince who stands watch over the sons of your people, and that his intervention will be crucial during the end times, when there will be a time of trouble such as never was since there was a nation, even to that time. This prophecy establishes Michael not only as protector of Israel, but as the divine guardian who will rise in the darkest moments of human history when the forces of evil reach their maximum power and humanity desperately needs celestial intervention. The apocryphal texts, particularly the Book of Enoch, provide us with a much more detailed understanding of Michael's nature and responsibilities. Enoch, the seventh from Adam, who walked with God and was taken to heaven without experiencing death, describes his journeys through the celestial spheres and his encounters with the archangels. In these extraordinary visions, Michael appears as the leader of the four principal archangels, along with Gabriel, Raphael, and Uriel. Each has specific responsibilities in the administration of divine creation. But Michael occupies a unique position as the supreme commander of the celestial armies and the executor of divine justice. Enoch describes how Michael was put in charge of humanity and the nations, making him the principal mediator between heaven and earth, the guardian who watches over the spiritual welfare of the entire human race. One of the most shocking revelations of the Book of Enoch refers to Michael's role during the rebellion of the fallen angels, known as the Watchers. These celestial beings, originally sent to protect and teach humanity, became corrupted by falling in love with the daughters of men and beginning to reveal celestial secrets that were forbidden to mortals. They taught humans the manufacture of weapons, the art of war, witchcraft, astrology, and knowledge that led to massive corruption of the human race. When this transgression reached its climax, it was Michael who carried the cry of the earth to the throne of the Most High, interceding for humanity and requesting divine intervention. The Book of Enoch vividly describes how Michael received the direct command from the Creator to execute judgment on the rebellious angels and to purify the earth of their corruption. The description of Michael executing this divine judgment is particularly powerful and revealing. Enoch relates how the archangel descended with a host of faithful angels, each armed with weapons of celestial fire that could destroy both body and spirit of the rebels. Michael personally confronted Azazel, one of the principal leaders of the fallen Watchers, and bound him with eternal chains before casting him into an abyss of fire prepared especially for his torment. But what is most notable about this narrative is that Michael did not act moved by vengeance or anger, but by a deep love for humanity and an unshakable zeal for divine justice. His action was both an act of judgment and mercy, eliminating the source of corruption so that humanity could have a new opportunity to walk in righteousness. The Book of Enoch also reveals more intimate aspects of Michael's nature, describing his responsibilities as guardian of divine secrets and protector of the righteous. We are told that Michael has access to the celestial books where are written the names of all who will be saved, and that his intercession is particularly powerful for those who sincerely seek truth and justice. Enoch describes how Michael led him through different regions of heaven, showing him the places prepared for the righteous and also the abysses destined for the punishment of the wicked. In these visions, Michael appears as a compassionate but firm guide, someone who understands both divine mercy and justice and knows how to apply each according to celestial wisdom. Pause for a moment and reflect with me. Have you ever felt that you are fighting battles that no one else can see? Those internal struggles that intensify in the silent hours of the night, when your mind fills with worries and your heart desperately seeks a peace that seems unattainable. This experience of feeling alone in the midst of spiritual conflicts, of longing for a protection that goes beyond what this world can offer, is more common than you imagine. Your search for something greater, for a force that can calm the storms of your soul, is not a weakness, but a sign that your spirit recognizes the need for the divine. Share with me in the comments. What silent battles have you been facing lately? Are there moments when you feel as if you need the intervention of a superior force to find the peace you seek? When you express these struggles, you not only release part of the burden you carry, but you also offer comfort to others who may be going through similar experiences. Your vulnerability becomes a beacon of hope for souls that, like yours, seek refuge in the eternal truths that transcend earthly difficulties. Later, Jewish tradition extensively developed the figure of Michael, especially in the Talmudic and Midrashic texts. The rabbis taught that Michael was created on the second day of creation, emerging from divine fire with a nature that combined perfect justice with unwavering mercy. According to these traditions, Michael is not only the protector of Israel as a nation, but the celestial advocate of each individual Jewish soul. It was believed that when a person died, Michael weighed their actions in the celestial scales, interceding for those who had shown genuine repentance and had sought to live according to divine precepts. This image of Michael as personal intercessor resonated deeply in the Jewish people during centuries of persecution and exile, offering hope that there existed a divine protection that transcended the most desperate earthly circumstances. The Midrashic texts also preserve fascinating traditions about the relationship between Michael and the other archangels. They describe how Michael, Gabriel, Raphael, and Uriel constantly surround the divine throne, each representing different aspects of the Creator's nature. Michael represents justice and strength, Gabriel mercy and revelation, Raphael healing and protection, and Uriel wisdom and judgment. However, Michael is described as the first among equals, the one who coordinates the actions of the others, and who has more direct access to the divine throne. A particularly beautiful tradition describes how Michael gathers the sincere prayers of the faithful and presents them before the Most High wrapped in flames of divine love, transforming each human petition into celestial incense that ascends to the very presence of the Creator. In early Christian literature, Michael acquires even deeper dimensions, especially in the New Testament and in the writings of the Church Fathers. The Epistle of Jude makes a fascinating reference to Michael in the context of a dispute with Satan over the body of Moses. This brief but significant passage reveals important aspects of Michael's character. Even when directly confronting the enemy of souls, he did not dare to pronounce judgment by his own authority, but said, "The Lord rebuke you." This attitude shows that Michael, despite his immense authority and power, remains completely submitted to the divine will, never acting on his own initiative, but always as a perfect instrument of celestial justice. This humility combined with absolute power makes him a model of spiritual leadership that transcends any earthly example. The book of Revelation presents perhaps the most dramatic and powerful image of Michael in all biblical literature. In chapter 12, John the Revelator describes a war in heaven that has cosmic implications for all creation. This vision presents Michael leading the faithful angels in a definitive battle against the dragon, that old serpent which is called the devil and Satan, which deceives the whole world. The description of this celestial war is both literal and symbolic, representing the fundamental conflict between good and evil that defines all salvation history. Michael appears here not as a bloodthirsty warrior, but as the champion of truth and justice who finally expels from heaven the forces of lies and rebellion. Michael's victory in this celestial war has immediate and eternal consequences for humanity. The apocalyptic text declares that after Satan's defeat, a great voice was heard in heaven saying, "Now is come salvation and strength and the kingdom of our God and the power of his Christ. For the accuser of our brethren is cast down, which accused them before our God day and night." This declaration reveals that Michael's victory is not simply a military triumph, but a spiritual liberation that allows humanity to access divine grace without the constant accusation of the enemy. Michael thus becomes the liberator who opens the way for each soul to approach the throne of grace with confidence, knowing that the accuser has been silenced forever. The Church Fathers extensively developed the theology about Michael, seeing in him a prefiguration of Christ and a model of perfect obedience to the divine will. Saint Jerome wrote that Michael was the angel who had appeared to Joshua as Prince of the Host of the Lord, identifying him as a pre-incarnate manifestation of the Son of God. This interpretation created a deep connection between Michael and the redemptive work of Christ, presenting the archangel as the celestial forerunner of the definitive victory over sin and death that would be manifested on the cross. St. Augustine developed this theology even further, teaching that Michael represented the perfect harmony between divine justice and mercy, showing how God's judgment is always motivated by love and directed toward the final restoration of all creation. Devotion to Saint Michael the Archangel spread rapidly throughout Christendom, generating a rich tradition of mystical experiences and apparitions that continued into modern times. One of the most famous occurred at Mount Gargano in Italy during the 5th century, when Michael appeared to the local bishop to establish a sanctuary in his honor. This apparition was followed by numerous miracles of healing and protection that led to Michael being recognized as special protector of the sick and those facing physical and spiritual dangers. The cave at Mount Gargano became one of the most important pilgrimage sites of the Middle Ages, attracting thousands of faithful who sought the Archangel's intercession in their personal struggles and spiritual quests. The tradition of Michael's apparitions continued throughout Christian history, with each manifestation adapted to the specific needs of the time. During the Crusades, Christian soldiers reported numerous visions of Michael leading them into battle, especially during the siege of Jerusalem. In times of plague and epidemic, Christian communities experienced the Archangel's special protection as he seemed to intervene supernaturally to stop the spread of deadly diseases. During the Reformation and Counter-Reformation, both Catholics and Protestants found in Michael a symbol of the struggle for doctrinal purity and biblical truth, although they interpreted his role in different ways according to their specific theological traditions. One of the most significant apparitions of modern times occurred in Fatima, Portugal in 1916, when Michael appeared to 3 little shepherds as the Angel of Portugal and the Angel of Peace. In these apparitions, Michael taught the children specific prayers for the reparation of humanity's sins and the conversion of sinners. His messages emphasize the need for penance and constant prayer, preparing the little seers for the subsequent apparitions of the Virgin Mary that would take place the following year. The prayers that Michael taught were characterized by their theological depth and transformative power, especially the famous prayer, "My God, I believe, I adore, I hope, and I love you. I ask pardon of you for those who do not believe, do not adore, do not hope, and do not love you." This prayer perfectly summarizes Michael's ministry as intercessor who seeks to repair the broken relationship between humanity and divinity. Michael's teachings at Fatima also revealed important aspects of his understanding of the human condition and his compassion toward suffering souls. The Archangel showed the children visions of hell and explained to them how souls arrive there not by divine whim, but as a consequence of their own free choices. However, he emphasized that God's mercy is infinite and that no soul is beyond redemption while it remains on earth. Michael taught that his own ministry included the protection of those who sincerely seek truth and forgiveness, especially in moments of intense temptation when the forces of evil seem to overwhelm human capacity to resist. The Islamic tradition also recognizes Michael, known in Arabic as Michael, as one of the most important archangels. In the Quran, Michael is mentioned alongside Gabriel, as one of the angels closest to Allah, responsible for providing physical and spiritual sustenance to creation. Islamic traditions describe Michael as the angel in charge of rain, vegetation, and the sustenance of all living creatures. This responsibility makes him a figure of mercy and divine provision, someone who constantly cares for the basic needs of humanity and all creation. Sufi mystics developed a special devotion to Michael, seeing him as the guardian of the secrets of divine nature and the guide who can lead the human soul toward deeper experiences of love and union with the Absolute. In Jewish Kabbalistic tradition, Michael occupies a central place in understanding celestial structure and the processes of divine creation. The Kabbalists teach that Michael is the archangel associated with the Sephirah of Chesed, loving kindness, representing the pure flow of divine love that sustains all existence. In this capacity, Michael not only protects and defends, but also spiritually nourishes and sustains all creatures. Kabbalistic texts describe complex meditations and spiritual practices designed to invoke Michael's presence, especially during moments of spiritual crisis or when the soul needs protection against negative forces. These practices are not seen as magic or superstition, but as legitimate methods to align human consciousness with celestial realities and allow the archangel's beneficial influence to manifest in earthly life. Michael's influence also extends to the realm of dreams and nocturnal visions, an aspect particularly relevant for those seeking peace and rest during waking hours. The mystical traditions of various cultures speak of how Michael can appear in dreams to offer protection, guidance, and healing to those who invoke him with sincere faith. These oniric experiences are not merely subjective, but represent genuine encounters with the celestial presence that transcends the normal limitations of space and time. Many people have reported how, after asking for Michael's protection before sleeping, they experience deeply restorative sleep, accompanied by dreams filled with light and peace that awaken them renewed and spiritually strengthened. The prayer to Saint Michael the Archangel, composed by Pope Leo III in 1886, has become one of the most powerful and widely used invocations in Christian tradition. This prayer arose after the Pope had a terrifying vision of Satan and his demons attacking the Church, immediately followed by the glorious apparition of Michael defending God's people. The prayer says, "Saint Michael, the Archangel, defend us in battle. Be our protection against the wickedness and snares of the devil. May God rebuke him, we humbly pray, and do thou, O Prince of the heavenly host, by the divine power of God, cast into hell Satan and all the evil spirits who prowl about the world, seeking the ruin of souls. Amen." This invocation has become a source of strength and protection for millions of people who face spiritual struggles, intense temptations, or psychic attacks that seem to exceed their natural capacity to resist. If you have reached this point in the narrative and still remain awake, it is because your soul recognizes that there is something deeper waiting for you in these silent hours of the night. This journey through Michael's story is not coincidence, but an invitation to discover the celestial protection that can transform your nights of restlessness into periods of restorative rest. When you subscribe to this channel, you are not simply following religious content, but joining a community of souls that, like yours, seek refuge in eternal truths that transcend earthly concerns. Here, you will regularly find new stories of angels and archangels that not only educate your mind, but nourish your spirit with the peace you have been seeking. Allow these celestial narratives to become the nocturnal balm that leads your soul toward the rest you so desperately need. Subscribe now and join us in this spiritual refuge where humanity's most ancient stories meet the deepest needs of your modern heart. The traditional iconography of Michael throughout the centuries has captured essential aspects of his nature and ministry that transcend cultural and denominational differences. Invariably, Michael is represented as a glorious warrior, dressed in celestial armor, wielding a flaming sword, and frequently scales that represent his role as executor of divine justice. However, the more subtle details of these representations reveal profound understandings of his character. His wings, always spread, symbolize not only his celestial nature, but also his constant readiness to come to the aid of those who invoke him. His face, typically serene but determined, reflects the perfect harmony between mercy and justice that characterizes all his celestial activity. The foot that frequently steps on the head of the vanquished dragon represents not triumphalism, but the definitive victory of good over evil that he makes possible through his perfect obedience to divine will. The colors traditionally associated with Michael in sacred art also have specific theological meanings. The royal blue that frequently dominates his vestments represents both his celestial royalty and his connection to the deepest divine mysteries. The gold that adorns his armor and weapons symbolizes the incorruptible purity of his nature and his direct participation in divine glory. The red that sometimes appears in his vestments or wings represents both his willingness to sacrifice and his burning zeal for justice and protection of the innocent. These visual elements are not merely decorative, but constitute a form of visual theology that communicates profound spiritual truths through the universal language of symbol and color. The tradition of invoking Michael during moments of spiritual or physical crisis is based on centuries of documented experiences of his supernatural intervention. The annals of saints and mystics are full of accounts of how Michael appeared in moments of extreme temptation to provide the necessary strength to resist evil, or during mortal illnesses to bring healing to both body and soul. Saint Joan of Arc is perhaps the most famous example of someone who was guided and protected directly by Michael, who appeared to her repeatedly to instruct her in her mission to liberate France and crown the Dauphin. But beyond these extraordinary cases, there exists a constant tradition of more discreet but equally real experiences of Michael's protective presence in the lives of ordinary people who seek to live with righteousness and faith. Modern psychology has attempted to explain these experiences as projections of the unconscious or as psychological coping mechanisms, but such reductionism fails to capture the consistency and transformative effects of these encounters with Michael. People who experience his protection or guidance report lasting changes in their ability to face fear, temptation, and adversity. They develop a confidence that transcends mere autosuggestion and a peace that remains stable even in extremely difficult circumstances. These effects suggest that experiences with Michael touch dimensions of reality that go beyond purely psychological processes, accessing sources of strength and wisdom that exist independently of the individual human mind. Contemporary theology has rediscovered the importance of Michael in the context of spiritual warfare, recognizing that the forces of evil operate not only at an individual level, but also through social, political, and economic structures that perpetuate injustice and oppression. In this context, Michael is invoked not only as personal protector, but as the celestial champion who can intervene in humanity's collective struggles against systematic corruption and institutionalized evil. This understanding expands his ministry beyond the purely personal sphere, presenting him as the divine ally of all those who work for social justice, world peace, and protection of society's most vulnerable. Spiritual renewal movements in various Christian traditions have rediscovered the importance of actively invoking Michael's protection, especially during periods of intense prayer, fasting, and deep spiritual seeking. These believers have learned that certain levels of spiritual growth inevitably attract the opposition of negative spiritual forces that seek to stop or divert the soul's progress toward union with God. In these critical moments, Michael's intercession becomes not only useful, but essential for maintaining spiritual stability and continuing to advance on the path of sanctification. Communities that practice this regular invocation report greater clarity in spiritual discernment, increased resistance to temptations, and an improved capacity to persevere in prayer and spiritual disciplines. The relationship between Michael and the Eucharist in Catholic tradition offers another fascinating dimension of his celestial ministry. Medieval theologians taught that Michael is present at every celebration of Mass, protecting the sacrament from any profanation and ensuring that the consecrated elements maintain their sacred integrity. This belief was based on the understanding that the Eucharist represents the most intimate meeting point between heaven and earth, and that such an encounter requires the special protection of the commander of the celestial armies. The faithful developed the practice of silently invoking Michael during the consecration asking that His presence purify their hearts and prepare them to worthily receive the body and blood of Christ. Michael's prophetic role, especially in relation to end-time events, continues to be the subject of study and contemplation in contemporary apocalyptic traditions. Biblical prophecies suggest that Michael will play a crucial role during the Great Tribulation, protecting the faithful during divine judgments and leading the celestial forces in the final battle against the Antichrist and his followers. However, these prophecies should not be interpreted only in futuristic terms, but also as present spiritual realities that manifest in the daily struggles between good and evil. Every time a person chooses truth over lies, justice over convenience, love over selfishness, they participate in Michael's cosmic victory over the forces of darkness. The Eastern Orthodox tradition has maintained a particularly rich devotion to Michael, especially through their iconographic and liturgical traditions. Orthodox icons of Michael are not only objects of veneration, but windows to celestial realities that allow the faithful to contemplate directly His glory and receive His blessing. The Orthodox liturgy includes numerous hymns and prayers directed to Michael, especially during celebrations of his feast on November 8th and during fasting periods when the faithful seek special protection against increased temptations. The Orthodox tradition teaches that Michael is present in a special way in monasteries, protecting the monks and nuns who have dedicated their lives completely to the pursuit of union with God. Contemporary mystical experiences with Michael continue to manifest in all Christian traditions, adapting to the specific needs of each historical epoch. In the 20th and 21st centuries, numerous seers, mystics, and ordinary people have reported encounters with Michael that reflect the unique concerns and challenges of the modern era. During both world wars, soldiers from both sides reported visions of Michael protecting them on the battlefield, suggesting that his ministry transcends human divisions and extends to all those who invoke him with sincere faith, regardless of their nationality or specific denomination. A notable characteristic of modern apparitions of Michael is their emphasis on interior healing and liberation from deep psychological traumas. In an era characterized by high levels of anxiety, depression, and emotional disorders, Michael has frequently appeared as a celestial healer who can touch the deepest wounds of the human soul and bring complete restoration. These encounters often involve not only the healing of specific symptoms, but a fundamental transformation of the person's perspective on their value, purpose, and relationship with the divine. People who experience this type of healing through Michael report a renewed capacity to trust, love, and find meaning in their lives, even after having suffered severe abuse or apparently irrecoverable traumas. Michael's tradition as protector during sleep and guardian against nightmares has deep roots in Christian experience, but has acquired new relevance in an era where sleep disorders and nocturnal anxiety affect millions of people. Spiritual therapists and pastoral counselors have rediscovered the efficacy of teaching their clients to invoke Michael's protection before sleeping, not as a form of superstition, but as a legitimate spiritual practice that can bring genuine peace to minds tortured by worries, fears, and disturbing memories. This practice is based on the understanding that sleep is a state of special vulnerability where negative spiritual influences can have easier access to human consciousness, and where angelic protection becomes particularly necessary and effective. Case studies documented by researchers of spiritual phenomena have recorded consistent patterns in the experiences of those who regularly invoke Michael for nocturnal protection. These people report a significant decrease in nightmares, night terrors, and episodes of sleep paralysis. More significantly, they experience an increase in dreams that bring peace, healing, and spiritual guidance. Some report lucid dreams where Michael appears directly to offer teaching, comfort, or revelation about important matters in their lives. These dreams are characterized by a clarity and emotional impact that clearly distinguishes them from ordinary dreams and frequently result in positive, lasting changes in the person's waking life. The contemporary practice of contemplative prayer has rediscovered Michael as an especially effective spiritual guide for those seeking to deepen their relationship with the divine through meditation and silent contemplation. Spiritual teachers teach that Michael can help cleanse the mind of distractions and negative thoughts that interfere with deep prayer, creating an interior space of silence and peace where the soul can more easily encounter the divine presence. This function of Michael as purifier of consciousness is based on his nature as spiritual warrior, who can expel not only external demonic influences, but also internal tendencies toward dispersion, doubt, and despair that prevent authentic spiritual growth. Charismatic prayer communities have developed particular forms of invoking Michael during sessions of deliverance prayer and interior healing, recognizing that certain types of emotional and spiritual wounds require the direct intervention of superior angelic authorities to be completely healed. In these contexts, Michael is invoked not only as protector, but as liberator, who can break spiritual chains that have kept people bound to destructive patterns of thought, emotion, and behavior. Deliverance ministers report that the invocation of Michael frequently marks the turning point in difficult prayer sessions, bringing a spiritual authority that negative forces cannot resist, and opening the way for complete and lasting healing. Devotion to Michael in the context of marriage and family life has experienced a notable renaissance in recent decades, particularly among couples facing severe marital crises, or families struggling against addictions, domestic violence, or deep generational dysfunctions. These families have discovered that invoking Michael as protector of the home can bring a supernatural transformation that goes beyond what conventional counseling or therapy can accomplish alone. Michael is seen as the guardian who can establish a spiritual protection around the home, expelling negative influences that contribute to conflicts, temptations, and destructive patterns, and allowing love, peace, and harmony to be established durably. The testimonies of families who have experienced this special protection from Michael describe dramatic changes in the atmosphere of their homes, with notable decreases in arguments, tensions, and seemingly irreconcilable conflicts. Family members report a greater capacity to communicate with love and respect, a reduction in destructive temptations such as infidelity or substance abuse, and an increase in general harmony and emotional well-being. These changes do not occur as a result of psychological manipulation or suggestion, but seem to flow from a genuine transformation in the spiritual environment of the home that allows the best qualities of each person to emerge more easily. Michael's ministry toward children and adolescents has been traditionally recognized, but has acquired new urgency. In an era where young people face unprecedented pressures and temptations through digital media, social networks, and a culture that frequently exposes them prematurely to influences that can damage their spiritual and emotional development. Christian parents have rediscovered the practice of consecrating their children to Michael's protection from birth, asking that the Archangel guard them not only from physical harm, but also from negative spiritual influences that could corrupt their innocence or divert them from their divine calling. Christian educators and youth workers have developed specific programs to teach children and adolescents to invoke Michael's protection when facing temptations, peer pressure, or dangerous situations. These programs are not presented as magic formulas, but as ways to develop a personal relationship with celestial realities that can provide real strength, wisdom, and protection in moments of need. Young people who participate in these programs report greater confidence in their ability to resist negative pressures, make correct moral decisions, and maintain their faith despite the contrary influences of their surrounding culture. The tradition of invoking Michael during moments of important decisions has been rediscovered by Christian professionals who face complex ethical dilemmas in their careers, especially those working in fields such as medicine, law, politics, and business, where pressures to compromise moral principles can be intense. These professionals have learned that Michael can provide not only protection against temptations, but also the wisdom and courage necessary to make decisions that honor God, even when such decisions might result in significant personal costs. The invocation of Michael in these contexts does not seek guarantees of worldly success, but the grace to maintain personal integrity and faithfulness to eternal principles, regardless of temporal consequences. The testimonies of professionals who have experienced Michael's guidance in their careers describe an increased clarity in moral discernment, supernatural strength to resist corrupt pressures, and a renewed capacity to find creative solutions to complex ethical problems that honor both justice and mercy. They frequently report that decisions made under Michael's guidance, although initially seeming disadvantageous from a worldly perspective, eventually result in unexpected blessings and opportunities that would not have been available if they had chosen to compromise their principles. The understanding of Michael as spiritual healer has led to the development of specific forms of prayer for those suffering from physical illnesses, especially conditions that have significant spiritual or emotional components. Although Michael is not traditionally known as a healing archangel in the same way as Raphael, his role as spiritual warrior places him in a unique position to address illnesses that have roots in trauma, stress, bitterness, or other deep spiritual wounds. Healing ministers have developed specific prayers that invoke both Michael's sword to cut spiritual bondages that contribute to illness and his intercession for divine healing to flow toward the affected areas of body, soul, and spirit. Documented cases of healings associated with Michael's intercession frequently involve not only physical restoration, but also a profound spiritual transformation that addresses the underlying causes of illness. People experience liberation from toxic thought patterns, healing of deep emotional wounds, and a renewal of their sense of purpose and hope that contributes significantly to their physical recovery. These cases suggest that Michael understands the interconnection between spiritual, emotional, and physical well-being, and can intervene in ways that address the totality of human experience rather than just specific symptoms. Michael's role as protector of faith during periods of religious persecution has acquired new relevance in an era where Christians in many parts of the world face hostility, discrimination, and violence for their beliefs. Persecuted Christians in countries such as China, North Korea, Iran, and numerous African nations have rediscovered traditional prayers to Michael as a source of strength, protection, and perseverance during interrogations, imprisonment, and torture. These modern martyrs report extraordinary experiences of Michael's presence during their greatest sufferings, providing them not only spiritual comfort, but also supernatural strength to resist pressures to renounce their faith. The testimonies of persecuted Christians who have invoked Michael's protection include accounts of miraculous interventions during arrests, supernatural protection during physical torture, and an inexplicable peace that allows them to maintain their joy and hope even in desperate circumstances. They frequently report visions of Michael during their darkest moments, appearing to remind them that their sufferings are not in vain and that their faithfulness is being recorded in heaven as a powerful testimony that will strengthen the faith of future generations. As this narrative reaches its culmination in the silent hours of the night, it is important to recognize that Michael's story transcends any specific account because his ministry continues to unfold in the lives of those who seek him with sincere hearts. His presence is not limited by the pages of ancient texts or by the traditions of specific denominations, but remains alive and accessible to anyone who recognizes their need for protection, guidance, and spiritual strength. In this era of global uncertainty, existential crisis, and intensified spiritual seeking, Michael emerges not as a relic of the past, but as a present reality that can touch and transform every aspect of contemporary human experience. The complete story of Michael that you have heard tonight is not simply academic information about ancient religious traditions, but a personal invitation to experience the presence and protection of this extraordinary archangel in your own life. Every element of his ministry, from his role as celestial warrior to his function as compassionate intercessor, from his authority over demonic forces to his tenderness toward suffering souls, is available to those who approach him with genuine faith and authentic need. His flaming sword that once expelled the rebellious angels from heaven can also cut the chains of fear, anxiety, and hopelessness that have kept you awake during so many lonely nights. The peace that Michael brings is not simply the absence of conflict, but the active presence of divine harmony that can transform even the most difficult circumstances into opportunities for spiritual growth and intimacy with the sacred. His protection is not just a shield against external dangers, but an interior fortress that allows you to face any challenge with confidence that you are not alone in your struggles. His intercession is not merely a distant petition before a remote celestial throne, but a personal and intimate advocacy that carries your deepest needs directly to the heart of divine love. When you allow this understanding of Michael to settle deeply in your soul, something fundamental changes in your relationship with sleep, rest and nocturnal peace. You no longer have to face the dark hours as a time of vulnerability and anxiety, but they can become periods of special communion with celestial realities that offer restoration for both your body and spirit. Michael's presence does not magically eliminate all of life's challenges, but it provides an eternal context within which even the greatest difficulties can be experienced as part of a broader divine purpose that works for your final good and spiritual growth. In these final moments of vigil before sleep finally comes, I invite you to make your own the ancient prayer that has consoled countless souls throughout the centuries. Saint Michael, the Archangel, in this silent night when my soul seeks rest, extend your protection over my restless spirit. May your sword of light cut the chains of worry that bind my mind. May your presence dispel the shadows of fear that disturb my heart, and may your intercession carry my deepest needs before the throne of the Most High. Cover this place with your mighty wings, establish your guard around my rest, and allow your peace, which surpasses all understanding, to guard my heart and mind while I sleep. May the dreams that come be heralds of hope, healing, and renewal, and may I wake tomorrow strengthened by your celestial care and prepared to walk in the divine light that you protect eternally. Amen. May this story of Michael, the most powerful archangel, become more than a tale heard in nocturnal solitude. May it transform into a living reality that accompanies your days and nights, a constant source of strength when you face challenges, of peace when your heart is troubled, and of hope when circumstances seem overwhelming. May Michael's protection cover you like a celestial mantle, his intercession elevate your prayers like sacred incense, and his presence constantly remind you that you are loved, protected, and destined for eternal purposes that transcend any temporary difficulty. In the sacred silence that now descends, may you find the rest your soul has been seeking, knowing that the armies of heaven mount guard over your sleep, and that dawn will bring new mercies, accompanied by the renewed strength that can only come from communion with celestial realities that never sleep, never rest, and never cease to watch over those who have placed their trust in the eternal love that sustains all creation. The mystical tradition of invoking Michael during times of spiritual dryness and apparent abandonment by God has provided comfort to countless souls who have walked through the dark nights of faith that characterize advanced stages of spiritual development. These periods, described extensively by mystics like St. John of the Cross and St. Teresa of Avila, represent times when God seems absent and prayer becomes difficult or even impossible. Yet they are recognized as essential phases of spiritual purification that prepare the soul for deeper union with the divine. During these challenging seasons, Michael's presence becomes particularly precious because his intercession continues even when the soul feels incapable of prayer, carrying the wordless groans of the Spirit before the throne of grace and ensuring that the spiritual journey continues even when all human effort seems futile. Contemporary spiritual directors have observed that those who invoke Michael during these dark nights often experience a subtle but profound transformation in their understanding of faith itself. Rather than depending solely on emotional consolations or intellectual certainties, they develop a deeper trust that operates independently of feelings or circumstances. This transformation, which mystics call pure faith, allows the soul to remain anchored in divine love even when that love cannot be sensed or comprehended by the human faculties. Michael's role in facilitating this transformation appears to involve protecting the soul from despair, while it learns to navigate purely by the light of faith, rather than by the more obvious consolations that characterize earlier stages of spiritual development. The tradition of Michael as guardian of sacred spaces has led to his special invocation in the blessing and protection of churches, monasteries, homes, and other places dedicated to prayer and worship. This practice recognizes that certain locations can become particularly charged with spiritual significance through the prayers and worship offered within them, and that such sacred spaces require special protection against forces that would seek to disrupt or defile their sanctity. Priests and ministers who regularly invoke Michael's protection over their sacred spaces report a noticeable difference in the spiritual atmosphere during worship services, with increased peace, deeper reverence, and a greater sense of the divine presence among the congregation. The protection of Michael extends also to the preservation of sacred objects, including relics, icons, blessed sacramentals, and holy books that have been consecrated for religious use. The tradition teaches that these objects can serve as conduits for grace and blessing, but they can also become targets for spiritual attack precisely because of their sacred significance. Those who care for such objects have developed specific prayers invoking Michael's protection, asking that he guard these sacred items from desecration, theft, or any form of profanation that would diminish their spiritual effectiveness. Museums and libraries that house ancient religious manuscripts and artifacts have sometimes reported unexplained preservation of items that, by all natural laws, should have deteriorated significantly over time. Michael's relationship with the process of spiritual discernment has been particularly emphasized in traditions that recognize the complexity of distinguishing between divine inspirations, natural psychological processes, and potentially deceptive spiritual influences. The gift of discernment of spirits, recognized in Christian tradition as one of the supernatural charisms available to believers, requires not only natural wisdom, but also supernatural assistance to operate reliably. Those who regularly invoke Michael's aid in discernment report an increased ability to recognize the source and quality of various spiritual impulses, inspirations, and apparent revelations. This enhanced discernment proves especially valuable for those in leadership positions who must make decisions affecting the spiritual welfare of others. The protective role of Michael in relation to spiritual gifts and charisms has been recognized by renewal movements that emphasize the contemporary operation of supernatural gifts such as prophecy, healing, tongues, and miracles. While these gifts are understood to be given directly by the Holy Spirit, the tradition recognizes that their proper operation can be hindered or corrupted by negative spiritual influences that seek to counterfeit genuine spiritual manifestations. Those who exercise such gifts have learned to invoke Michael's protection not to control or manipulate the gifts themselves, but to create a clear spiritual environment where authentic divine manifestations can operate without interference from deceptive influences. The intercession of Michael for those who have died has been a consistent element of Christian tradition, particularly in relation to the purification process that souls may undergo after death before entering into the fullness of divine glory. This doctrine, developed extensively in Catholic theology, but present in various forms across different Christian traditions, recognizes Michael's role as guide and protector of souls during their transition from earthly to eternal existence. Prayers requesting Michael's assistance for deceased loved ones reflect the belief that his intercession can help souls navigate the challenges of their post-mortem journey and can provide comfort to the living who grieve their loss. The tradition of Michael as protector of pilgrims and travelers has ancient roots, but continues to be relevant for modern believers who undertake physical or spiritual journeys. Whether the journey involves actual travel to sacred sites or the metaphorical pilgrimage of spiritual growth, those who invoke Michael's protection often report experiences of unexpected assistance, protection from dangers both seen and unseen, and encounters that prove significant for their spiritual development. The prayers for travelers that include invocations of Michael typically ask not only for physical safety, but also for spiritual protection against the temptations and distractions that can arise when one is removed from familiar environments and support systems. Modern technology has created new contexts for Michael's protective ministry, particularly in relation to the spiritual dangers that can arise through internet use, social media engagement, and exposure to digital content that may be harmful to spiritual or psychological well-being. Christians who work extensively online or who are concerned about their family's exposure to negative digital influences have adapted traditional prayers to Michael to address these contemporary challenges. These prayers typically ask for wisdom in digital choices, protection against cyberbullying or online predators, and the grace to use technology in ways that honor God and benefit others, rather than contributing to addiction, isolation, or moral compromise. The understanding of Michael as protector of the church during times of crisis and scandal has provided comfort to faithful believers who struggle with disappointment, anger, or loss of faith. When religious leaders fail to live up to their calling, rather than becoming cynical about institutional religion, those who turn to Michael for guidance often find the strength to distinguish between human failures and divine truth, maintaining their faith in God while working constructively for necessary reforms and healing within religious communities. Michael's intercession in these situations appears to provide both the courage to confront wrongdoing and the wisdom to do so in ways that promote genuine healing rather than mere destruction. The role of Michael in protecting and strengthening marriages has been particularly emphasized in recent decades, as traditional understanding of marriage has been challenged by cultural changes and legal redefinitions. Couples who invoke Michael's protection over their marriages report not only increased harmony and reduced conflict, but also a deeper understanding of marriage as a spiritual reality that transcends cultural or legal definitions. These couples often describe experiencing their marriage as a participation in divine love itself, with Michael's protection helping them to resist the cultural pressures that would reduce marriage to a mere contractual arrangement rather than a sacred covenant. The protection of Michael over unborn children and pregnant mothers has been invoked increasingly as societies grapple with complex questions about the beginning of life and the rights of the unborn. Regardless of their position on specific political issues, many believers find in Michael a protector who values all human life as sacred from conception to natural death. Pregnant women who invoke Michael's protection often report experiences of peace and confidence even in difficult pregnancies, along with a deeper sense of the sacredness of the life developing within them. The ministry of Michael toward those struggling with mental health challenges has gained recognition as religious communities have become more aware of the complex relationship between spiritual and psychological well-being. Rather than seeing mental illness as simply a spiritual problem or purely a medical issue, those who invoke Michael's intercession often find help in addressing both the spiritual and natural dimensions of their struggles. Mental health professionals who are also believers have sometimes noted that clients who maintain regular spiritual practices, including prayer to Michael, often show greater resilience and more rapid recovery from various psychological disorders. The tradition of Michael as protector during natural disasters and other catastrophic events has been documented throughout history and continues to be relevant as communities face increasingly severe weather events, earthquakes, fires, and other natural emergencies. Emergency responders and disaster relief workers who invoke Michael's protection often report experiences of supernatural strength, wisdom in making critical decisions under pressure, and protection from dangers that could have been fatal. Communities that have established traditions of prayer to Michael before and during natural disasters frequently report less severe damage and more rapid recovery than might otherwise be expected. The intercession of Michael for those struggling with addiction and other compulsive behaviors recognizes that these conditions often involve spiritual as well as physical and psychological components. Treatment programs that incorporate prayer to Michael alongside medical and therapeutic interventions often report higher success rates and lower relapse rates than purely secular approaches. Those in recovery who maintain devotion to Michael frequently describe experiencing supernatural strength to resist temptation and a gradual transformation of their desires that goes beyond mere willpower or behavioral modification. As the hours of night deepen and this comprehensive exploration of Michael's ministry draws toward its peaceful conclusion, we arrive at a truth that transcends all the historical accounts, theological explanations, and mystical experiences we have examined together. Michael's ultimate significance lies not in the accumulation of facts about him, but in the living relationship he offers to each soul that reaches out to him in faith and need. His story becomes your story when you allow his protection to surround your vulnerabilities, his strength to supplement your weaknesses, and his intercession to carry your deepest longings before the throne of infinite love. The transformation that Michael offers is not merely personal, but cosmic in scope. As you align yourself with his ministry of justice, protection, and intercession, you participate in the great work of restoration that God is accomplishing throughout creation. Your small acts of faith, your moments of trust in divine protection, your willingness to seek help from celestial realms all contribute to the vast tapestry of grace that is slowly but surely transforming this broken world into the kingdom of love and peace that was always God's intention for creation. In surrendering your fears to Michael's protection, you discover that courage is not the absence of fear, but the presence of a strength greater than fear. In trusting your battles to his intercession, you learn that victory is not always visible in immediate circumstances, but is secured in eternal realities that transcend temporary defeats. In allowing his peace to guard your sleep, you experience rest, not as mere physical recovery, but as participation in the eternal Sabbath of divine love, where all creation finds its ultimate fulfillment. The prayer that now rises from your heart needs no elaborate words or complicated formulas. Michael responds to the simplest cry for help, the most basic recognition of need, the humblest acknowledgement that you cannot face life's challenges alone. As your eyes grow heavy with the blessed weight of approaching sleep, know that your prayer has been heard, your need has been seen, and your protection has been established by one whose authority is absolute and whose compassion is infinite. Let the story of Michael the Archangel become a lullaby that carries you into peaceful rest, a shield that guards your dreams, and a promise that tomorrow will bring new strength for whatever challenges await. In the profound silence that now embraces you, feel the presence of wings that never tire, of love that never fails, and of protection that extends beyond the boundaries of this world into realms of glory that await all who place their trust in the eternal purposes of divine love. Sleep now in the peace of Michael's protection and wake refreshed in the light of God's infinite grace.